You picked up your phone to check your email. That was the plan. One email, 30 seconds. It is now 11 at night, and you know what the largest cat in Norway looks like. You didn't want to know that. Nobody wants to know that. And yet some part of you, the part that is supposed to be the smartest thing in the known universe, looked at a message from your boss and a cat the size of a Labrador and did not hesitate. It happens on the highway too. There's an accident on the other side of the road. Nobody wants to see it. Everybody slows down. A whole mile of people who would each tell you, sincerely, that they are not the kind of person who slows down. So this video is about why that happens. And I'll warn you now, the answer is not because people are shallow. It's stranger than that, because by the end, you'll see that weird doesn't actually live where you think it does. Let's start with the part you had no say in. About a century ago, Ivan Pavlov, yes, the dog guy, described something he called the, what is it? Reflex. Something new shows up, and before you've thought anything at all, your body has already turned toward it. Head, eyes, a little jump in heart rate. It's called the orienting response, and it fires before the conscious part of you gets a vote, which makes sense when you think about where it came from. For almost all of human history, something unusual meant one of two things: something that might eat you, or something you might eat. Either way, the correct move was to look. The people who glanced up at the odd rustle in the grass tended to survive. The people who thought, probably nothing, fewer grandchildren. So you're descended from the lookers. Every one of your ancestors, going back a very long way, was someone who turned their head, which means that cat at 11 p.m. is, technically, a gift from the people who outlived the saber-toothed tigers. They did not know it would be used this way. Now here's where it gets interesting, because you'd think the rule is simple. The weirder it is, the harder it pulls. It isn't, and there's a famous experiment that proves it. 1999. Psychologists Daniel Simons and Christopher Chabris show people a short video, two teams passing basketballs, and your job is to count the passes by the team in white. Halfway through, a person in a full gorilla suit walks into the middle of the frame, stops, thumps their chest, and walks off. 9 seconds on screen. About half the people never see the gorilla. Not barely noticed. Never saw it. They'll argue with you. They'll demand to watch the tape again, and then they'll sit there in silence. So, a gorilla in a room in the middle of the shot can be completely invisible, and yet that same gorilla, strolling down an empty street, would stop you dead. The gorilla didn't change. What changed is what your brain was expecting. And that's the actual mechanism, the one underneath everything else in this video. Your brain doesn't respond to weird. It responds to prediction error, the gap between what it expected to happen next and what actually happened. Here's the part most people never hear. Your brain is predicting the next half second of the world, constantly, about everything. And when the prediction comes true, it mostly doesn't bother showing you. The hallway looked the way it always looks. Skip. Your hand went where you sent it. Skip. You are not really watching reality. You're watching the differences, the places where the forecast missed. So the weird thing isn't weird out in the world. It's weird relative to a forecast you made, and you didn't even know you'd made one. Fine, so the brain flags surprises. But that doesn't explain why you can't stop. Flagging something and enjoying it are different things. 3 pieces of research close the gap. First, the chemistry. In the 1990s, neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz was recording dopamine neurons in monkeys and found something that rewired the whole field. Dopamine didn't spike when the monkey got a reward. It spiked when the reward was unexpected. Give the same juice every time, and the signal flattens out to nothing. The system isn't paying you for good things. It's paying you for surprises. Which means that every time your prediction misses, you get a small chemical. Well, that's interesting, whether or not the thing was worth your time. Second, the memory. In 1933, a psychologist named Hedwig von Restorff showed that in a list of similar items, the one that stands out gets remembered far better than the rest. One red number in a list of black ones, one word in a list of syllables. The effect is so reliable it has her name on it. There's a cousin of it called the bizarreness effect. Strange images stick, where ordinary ones slide off. This is why, tomorrow, you will remember the cat. You will not remember the email, The email had the nerve to be exactly what you expected. Third, the itch. In 1994, economist George Loewenstein proposed that curiosity isn't a hunger for information. It's a gap, the uncomfortable distance between what you know and what you almost know. Not knowing anything about a subject is fine. Knowing 90% is torture. That last 10% is where you can't look away. Notice that every "you won't believe what happened next" headline is built on exactly this. It hands you 90% and hides the rest. That's not stupidity. That's surgery. So is more weird always better? If a little surprise is good, is a lot of surprise great? No, and this is the part that's almost funny, because everybody has a line, and nobody agrees where it is. Back in the 1960s, psychologist Daniel Berlyne mapped it out. Plot how much you like something against how novel it is, and you don't get a rising line. You get an upside-down U. A little novelty, and you lean in. Too much, and the same system that said interesting flips to get it away from me. The far end of that curve has a name you might know. The uncanny valley. A robot that's clearly a robot is charming. A robot that's 95% human is a nightmare. Same dial. Turned too far. And the strange thing is, your line is yours. An octopus opening a jar, delightful. Watched it twice. An octopus opening a jar from the inside, no thank you, I have to sleep tonight. Which brings us back to the highway. There's a researcher named Coltan Scrivner who studies what he calls morbid curiosity, why people are drawn to the dark stuff. During the pandemic, his team found that horror fans were coping noticeably better than everyone else. Not because they were tougher, because they'd been rehearsing. The pull toward frightening things, at a safe distance, looks a lot like a system running simulations. This is what it looks like when things go wrong. Good to know. So, when you slow down at the accident, you're not a terrible person. You're a very old piece of software checking what danger looks like, in case it's ever needed. It just doesn't know you're never going to need it on the way to the supermarket. Now, the part where I stop making cat jokes. Everything I've described was built for a world where genuinely unusual things happened at most a few times a week. A strange animal, a stranger in the village, a sky that looked wrong. The detector could afford to fire hard every time, because every time was rare. That detector is now being fed thousands of times a day, and not randomly. Every scroll is measured. Which thing made you stop, and for how long, and what you did next. The systems on the other side don't need to understand psychology. They only need to notice what you turned your head toward, and serve more of it. They are, in effect, running 100 million tiny experiments on the orienting reflex, and the reflex is losing because it was never designed to be studied. Here's what that does over time. The detector habituates. Yesterday's gorilla becomes today's background. So the content has to get stranger just slightly, just enough to produce the same little jolt. Nobody decides that. It's just where the curve goes if you follow it. So, no, it isn't broken. That's the uncomfortable bit. Your attention is working exactly as designed. It's just not working for you. But I want to be careful here, because this can tip into curiosity is the enemy, and it isn't. The same reflex that found the cat also found fire and penicillin, and the fact that the stars move. The urge to look at the thing that doesn't fit is, arguably, the whole reason we have anything. The question was never, how do I stop looking at weird things? You can't, and you shouldn't want to. The question is, who gets to decide what counts as weird for you today? So, 11 p.m. The cat. You weren't really looking at a cat. You were looking at a crack in your own picture of the world, a place where the forecast missed, and something very old in you leaned in to check whether reality still works the way it thought. It's been doing that for 100,000 years, and nearly every time, it was the right call. The weird thing was never the point. Your brain was just checking whether the world still works the way it thought it did.